The gunshot echoed across the valley, sending a flock of startled crows into the darkening sky as Olivia Wilson clutched her bleeding arm and ran faster than she ever had in her 22 years of life. The year was 1876, and the Idaho Territory was no place for a woman alone, especially one with $3,000 that didn't belong to her. There she goes. Don't let her get away. The gruff voice of Jed Hawkins, the most notorious outlaw in the territory, carried on the wind as Olivia pushed through the tall grass toward the silhouette of a barn in the distance. The sun was setting over the rolling hills outside of Boise, painting the landscape in hues of gold and crimson that matched the blood seeping through her torn sleeve. The money pressed against her side, hidden in the inner pocket of her father's old coat, too big for her frame but perfect for concealing things that weren't meant to be found. Her lungs burned as she reached the weathered structure, its wooden walls promising temporary sanctuary from the men who'd killed her father just hours before. With trembling hands, she pulled open the heavy door just enough to slip inside, then closed it behind her, plunging herself into darkness broken only by thin slivers of fading light filtering through the gaps in the planks. The smell of hay and horses filled her nostrils as she moved deeper into the barn, searching for a place to hide. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dim interior, revealing stalls along one side and a ladder leading to a hayloft above. With no time to waste, she scrambled up the ladder, wincing as splinters bit into her palms and the wound on her arm throbbed mercilessly. In the loft, Olivia burrowed into the hay, pulling it over her body until only her face remained uncovered, allowing her to breathe and watch the door below. The stolen money not stolen, she corrected herself bitterly, recovered pressed uncomfortably against her ribs. It had been her father's life savings, taken by Hawkins and his gang during a poker game rigged from the start. When her father had confronted them, they'd shot him dead in the street like a dog. She hadn't planned to take it back. Not until she'd overheard them at the saloon, drunk and boasting about how they'd cheated that fool Wilson and were planning to leave town at first light. Something had snapped inside her then, a mixture of grief and rage that drove her to their room at the boarding house while they drank downstairs. She'd found the money easily enough, but not the clean getaway she'd hoped for. Now, as darkness fell completely, she listened to the sounds of hoofbeats approaching, then passing by the barn. They hadn't seen her come in here, she was certain of it, but they were searching, and they wouldn't stop until they found her. The minutes stretched into an hour as Olivia lay still, her body growing stiff and her arm throbbing with increasing intensity. The bleeding had slowed, but the pain remained sharp and insistent. She needed to clean and bind the wound, but she didn't dare move from her hiding place. Then, just as she was beginning to hope the outlaws had moved on to search elsewhere, the barn door creaked open. Olivia held her breath, pressing herself deeper into the hay. Heavy footsteps moved across the wooden floor below, deliberate and unhurried. This wasn't the chaotic energy of Hawkins and his men, this was someone else. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "Barn's private property, anyone in here best speak up now." She remained silent, heart hammering against her ribs. The footsteps continued, moving around the barn methodically. She heard the soft nickering of horses as the stranger checked the stalls. Then the footsteps paused, and she knew with terrible certainty that he was looking at the ladder. "I can see the blood on the rungs," the voice said, softer now. "Whoever you are, you're hurt. I'm coming up and I'm armed, so don't try anything foolish." The ladder creaked as he climbed, each sound bringing him closer. Olivia's hand moved to the small Derringer pistol tucked in her boot, her father's final gift to her, meant for protection. She gripped it tightly, preparing to defend herself if necessary. A head appeared at the edge of the loft, followed by broad shoulders. In the near darkness, she could make out little more than a silhouette crowned by a wide-brimmed hat. The man held a lantern in one hand, a revolver in the other. When he raised the lantern, its golden light illuminated a face weathered by sun and wind. With eyes the color of a summer sky and a strong jaw shadowed by a day's worth of stubble. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with a serious expression that softened slightly when he saw her half buried in the hay, clutching her wounded arm. "Madam," he said, lowering his gun but not holstering it. "You're trespassing on my property." "I'm sorry," Olivia whispered, the derringer still hidden in her palm. "I didn't know where else to go." The man's eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance, the blood-soaked sleeve, the fear in her eyes, the way she was clearly hiding something in her right hand. "That's a bullet wound," he stated flatly. "You running from the law?" "No," she answered quickly. "Not the law, just men who don't deserve to wear a badge." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Hawkins and his crew, I reckon, heard they were in town." He sighed, holstering his revolver. "I'm Adam O'Malley. This is my ranch." "Olivia Wilson," she replied, the admission coming before she could think better of it. "Wilson?" His eyebrows rose. "Any relation to Thomas Wilson? Heard he was killed in town today." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes unbidden. "My father." Adam's expression softened further. "I'm sorry, Miss Wilson. Your father was a good man." He gestured to her wound. "Let me take a look at that arm. I've some experience with bullet wounds." Olivia hesitated, her grip tightening on the derringer. "You can keep your hand on whatever you're holding there," Adam said with a hint of a smile. "But I'd appreciate if you didn't shoot me while I'm trying to help." After a moment's consideration, Olivia nodded, allowing him to move closer. As he knelt beside her, the lantern light revealed more details of his face, the small scar near his left eyebrow, the lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. "The bullet went clean through," he observed after examining her arm. "That's fortunate. Still needs cleaning and stitching, though." He looked toward the barn door, then back at her. "Can you walk? My house is just up the hill." "I can't," she said urgently. "They're looking for me. They'll kill you too if they find me here." Adam's jaw tightened. "Hawkins doesn't scare me, Miss Wilson, but I understand your concern." He thought for a moment. "Stay here, I'll bring what we need." Before she could protest, he was moving back toward the ladder. At the edge of the loft, he paused. "Don't worry, I'll keep watch. You're safe here." As he disappeared down the ladder, Olivia wondered if she could trust his words. Men had made promises to her before, and few had kept them. But something in Adam O'Malley's steady gaze made her want to believe him. True to his word, Adam returned within 20 minutes, carrying a bundle of supplies and a canteen of water. He worked efficiently, cleaning her wound with whiskey that made her bite her lip to keep from crying out, then stitching it closed with neat, even sutures. "You've done this before," she observed as he wrapped a clean bandage around her arm. "Army surgeon taught me during the war," he replied. "Served with the Union cavalry." His hands were gentle despite their size and roughness. "Came out here after Appomattox, wanted open spaces and quiet." "And did you find them?" Olivia asked, grateful for the distraction from the pain. A smile ghosted across his lips. "Most days." He secured the bandage and sat back. "Now, Miss Wilson, I think it's time you told me exactly what happened and why Hawkins is hunting you through my property." Olivia hesitated, then reached into her coat and withdrew the bundle of bills. "They killed my father over this. It was his money, all he had. They cheated him out of it, then shot him when he confronted them." "So you took it back," Adam finished for her, understanding in his eyes. "I did." She lifted her chin defiantly. "Would you have done differently?" He shook his head slowly. "No, madam, I don't believe I would have." He rose to his feet. "But Hawkins isn't a man who forgives or forgets. They'll be looking for you come morning, if not before." "I know," Olivia whispered, fear settling back into her bones. "I'll move on tonight. I don't want to bring trouble to your door." "You're not going anywhere with that arm," Adam said firmly, "and certainly not in the dark with killers about." He moved toward the ladder. "I'm going back to the house for some food and extra ammunition, then I'm standing guard." "Mr. O'Malley." "Adam," he corrected. "Adam," she repeated, the name feeling unexpectedly right on her tongue. "You don't need to risk your life for me. You've done enough already." He paused, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Miss Wilson, there are some things a man does because they're right, not because they're safe." With that, he descended the ladder, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts. True to his word, Adam returned with food, blankets, and a rifle. He positioned himself near the barn door, rifle across his lap, while Olivia ate the simple meal he'd brought: bread, cheese, and cold venison. "You should get some rest," he told her as night deepened outside. "I'll wake you if there's trouble." Though she hadn't intended to sleep, exhaustion and the lingering effects of pain and fear soon pulled Olivia into a fitful slumber. She dreamed of her father, of gunshots and running, of blood on her hands that wouldn't wash away. She woke with a start sometime later, disoriented in the darkness. A hand covered her mouth gently, and Adam's voice whispered close to her ear, "Stay quiet. They're outside." Her heart pounded as she nodded her understanding, and he removed his hand. In the silence that followed, she could hear voices outside the barn, rough, angry voices that she recognized all too well. "She came this way, I'm sure of it," Hawkins was saying. "Blood trail led toward these buildings. Could have gone to the main house," another voice suggested. "Split up," Hawkins ordered. "Two of you check the house, me and Barton will take the barn, shoot anything that moves." Adam moved silently across the loft to where Olivia lay frozen in fear. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." Before she could protest, he was gone, moving down the ladder with barely a creak. From her position, she could see him take up a stance in the shadows beside the door, rifle ready. The barn door swung open, and two figures entered, silhouetted against the night sky. They carried lanterns that cast long, grotesque shadows across the barn floor. "Check the stalls," Hawkins ordered. "I'll look up top." As the outlaw leader moved toward the ladder, Adam stepped out of the shadows. "Evening, gentlemen. You're trespassing on private property." Both men whirled, guns appearing in their hands as if by magic. Adam's rifle was already leveled at Hawkins's chest. "Who the hell are you?" Hawkins demanded. "Adam O'Malley. This is my ranch." "We're looking for a woman," Hawkins said, his gun not wavering. "Thief and murderer. Might have come this way." "Haven't seen any woman," Adam replied evenly, "and I've been here all evening. You wouldn't mind if we have a look around then?" Hawkins's smile didn't reach his eyes, just to be thorough. "I would mind," Adam said. "In fact, I'm asking you to leave now." "Whatever business you have, take it elsewhere." The second man, Barton, began to edge toward the ladder while Hawkins kept Adam's attention. Olivia saw it happening, saw Adam's focus divided, and made a split-second decision. She raised the derringer and fired. The shot cracked through the barn, and Barton crumpled with a cry of pain, clutching his shoulder. Hawkins fired back reflexively, the bullet splintering the wood near Olivia's head. Before he could fire again, Adam's rifle barked, and Hawkins staggered backward, dropping his gun as blood blossomed on his chest. "You made a mistake," Hawkins gasped, falling to his knees. His eyes, filled with hatred, found Olivia peering from the loft. "Others will come for you." Then he toppled forward, face down on the barn floor. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by Barton's pained moaning. Adam quickly secured the wounded outlaw, using rope from a nearby post to bind his hands. "Are you all right?" Adam called up to Olivia. "Yes," she answered shakily, climbing down from the loft with care for her injured arm. But the others, as if on cue, gunshots erupted from the direction of the main house, followed by shouting. Adam's face hardened. "My ranch hands will handle them," he said. "They've been on alert since I spotted riders earlier today." He looked down at Hawkins's body, then at the bound Barton. "But we need to get you somewhere safer until this is over." He led her out the back of the barn and across a moonlit pasture to a small cabin partially hidden by a stand of cottonwoods. "My foreman's place," he explained. "He's up at the main house, but no one will look for you here." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean, with a single room containing a bed, table, stove, and chair. Adam lit a lamp, then moved to the window, watching for any sign of pursuit. "Will your men be all right?" Olivia asked, sinking onto the edge of the bed as the adrenaline began to fade, leaving her trembling. "They're good men," Adam said, though concern shadowed his features. "And they outnumber what's left of Hawkins's gang." He turned to face her. "You saved my life back there. That shot gave me the opening I needed." "You were saving mine," she replied simply. "It seemed only fair to return the favor." A smile touched his lips, transforming his face. "I believe we're even then, Miss Wilson." "Olivia," she corrected, echoing his earlier words. "Please call me Olivia." "Olivia," he repeated softly, and something in the way he said her name made her heart beat faster for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. More gunshots sounded in the distance, and Adam's expression turned grim again. "Stay here," he ordered. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night with his rifle in hand, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts and the distant sounds of violence. The next hour was the longest of Olivia's life as she waited in the silent cabin, jumping at every sound. She had reloaded her Derringer with the single spare bullet she carried and now held it ready, though she prayed she wouldn't need to use it again. When a knock finally came at the door, she approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she called, voice steadier than she felt. "Adam," came the reply. "It's over, Olivia. You can open the door." She did so, relief washing over her at the sight of him standing there, whole and unharmed save for a shallow cut on his forehead. Behind him, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. The other outlaws. She asked as he stepped inside. One dead, one wounded and captured like Barton, the fourth surrendered. He set his rifle down and accepted the cloth she offered to wipe the blood from his face. "My men are taking them into Boys for the sheriff. Hawkins's body too. And your men." "A few cuts and bruises, nothing serious." He sat heavily in the chair, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. "You're safe now, Olivia. Those men can't hurt you anymore." She sat across from him on the edge of the bed. "What happens next?" Adam rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "The sheriff will want your statement. There'll likely be questions about your father's death and the money." "I have no proof it was his," she said quietly. "Just my word against theirs. The surviving gang members might talk, hoping for leniency." He studied her face. "But even if they don't, I'll speak for you. My word carries weight in these parts." "Why would you do that?" Olivia asked. "You barely know me." His blue eyes held her steadily. "I know enough. I know you loved your father and tried to right a wrong. I know you're brave foolishly so, perhaps, and loyal." A small smile curved his lips. "And I know you're a fair shot with that little gun of yours." Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling back. "My father taught me, said a woman alone needs to protect herself." "A wise man," Adam nodded. He stood, moving to the stove. "You should rest more. I'll make us some coffee, then ride into town to speak with the sheriff." He glanced back at her. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. The ranch is safe now." Gratitude welled up in Olivia's chest, along with something else she couldn't quite name, something warm and unexpected that had nothing to do with the danger they'd faced together, and everything to do with the kind of man Adam O'Malley had proven himself to be. "Thank you," she said simply. Knowing the words were inadequate but unable to find better ones, he nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Try to get some sleep. I'll wake you when the coffee's ready." But as Olivia lay back on the bed, she knew sleep would elude her. Too much had happened, too much had changed, in the span of a single night. Her father was gone, but she had survived, and not just survived, but found an unexpected ally in this quiet, steadfast rancher who had risked everything for a stranger. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the cabin's small window, Olivia closed her eyes, not in sleep, but in silent prayer of gratitude for her life, of mourning for her father, and of hope, faint but persistent, that whatever came next might somehow be bearable. Adam returned from town late that afternoon, bringing news that the sheriff had accepted his account of events. The surviving outlaws had indeed confessed to cheating Thomas Wilson and shooting him when confronted, lending credibility to Olivia's claim on the money. It's yours now, Adam said, handing her the bundle of bills. Sheriff says there's no dispute since the Outlaws admitted it was taken from your father unlawfully. Olivia stared at the money in her hands. I don't even know what to do with it, she admitted. Father was going to buy a small ranch outside of Boise. It was his dream. It could still be your dream, Adam suggested gently. She shook her head. I don't know the first thing about ranching, and I'm alone now. You're not entirely alone, he said, his voice so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a possibility. Then Adam cleared his throat and looked away. You're welcome to stay here while you decide what's next. My housekeeper, Mrs. Garrett has prepared a room for you in the main house. I couldn't impose, it's no imposition, he interrupted. After what happened last night, my men would feel better knowing you're safe. So would I. Olivia considered his offer. She had nowhere else to go, no family to return to. Her father's boarding house room in Boise held nothing but painful memories now. Thank you, she said at last. I'll stay, but only until I figure out what to do next. Adam smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. That's settled then. Let me show you to the house. The main ranch house was larger than Olivia had expected, a 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Inside, it was simply but comfortably furnished, with a large stone fireplace dominating the main room. Mrs. Garrett, a plump, motherly woman in her 50s, welcomed Olivia warmly despite the unusual circumstances. Any friend of Mr. O'Malley's is welcome here, she said, showing Olivia to a pleasant room on the 2nd floor. Dinner will be at 6. The men eat in the bunkhouse, but Mr. O'Malley takes his meals here. I'll bring up some hot water for you to freshen up. Left alone, Olivia took stock of her situation. Her arm ached but was healing well thanks to Adam's care. The money, her father's legacy, was secure. She was safe for the moment, with a roof over her head and people who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare, yet the future remained uncertain. At 22, she had few options. She could return to St. Louis, where she'd lived until her mother died 3 years ago. Her aunt might take her in, though they had never been close. Or she could stay in Idaho Territory and try to make a new life somehow, as she washed and changed into the clean dress Mrs. Garrett had found for her slightly too large but serviceable. Olivia pondered what her father would have wanted for her. He had been a dreamer, always chasing the next opportunity, which was what had brought them west in the first place. But he had also been practical in his way. Always have a plan, Livy, he used to say. And when that plan falls apart, have another one ready. She smiled at the memory, though it brought tears to her eyes. She had no plan now, only the immediate reprieve offered by Adam O'Malley's hospitality. At dinner, she found Adam already seated at the large oak table. He rose when she entered, pulling out a chair for her with an old-world courtesy that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. Mrs. Garrett is a fine cook, he said as they began the meal. One of the reasons my men stay on, they eat better than most in these parts. How long have you had this ranch? Olivia asked, genuinely curious about the man who had saved her life. 5 years, he replied. Came out west with not much more than the horse I rode and the clothes on my back. Worked cattle drives, saved every penny. This place was run down when I bought it, but the land was good. You've done well with it, she observed. He shrugged modestly. Been fortunate, found good men, made smart choices, had my share of hard times too. His eyes met hers. What about you? Before all this happened, what were your plans? Olivia pushed her food around her plate. I didn't really have any. After Mother died, Father and I moved around a lot. He was always looking for the next opportunity. She sighed. I just followed along, keeping house, making do. When he talked about buying land here, I thought perhaps we'd finally settle somewhere permanently. And now I don't know, she admitted. I have his money, but I'm not sure what to do with it. Adam considered this. There's a small property bordering mine to the east. Good water, decent grazing. Owners looking to sell and move to California. Are you suggesting I buy it? Olivia asked, surprised, just mentioning it as a possibility. His eyes held her steadily. Your father's dream of land doesn't have to die with him. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I wouldn't know where to begin running a ranch. A smile played at the corners of Adam's mouth. Neighbors help each other out here. It's how we survive. The offer was implicit but clear. He would help her if she chose to stay. The realization warmed Olivia in ways she hadn't expected. I'll think about it, she promised. The next few days passed in a strange kind of limbo as Olivia recovered her strength and considered her options. She attended her father's funeral in Boise, a simple affair but well attended by those who had known Thomas Wilson, however briefly. Adam accompanied her, a silent, supportive presence at her side. Back at the ranch, she found herself drawn to the rhythms of daily life, the pre-dawn stirrings, as the ranch hands prepared for the day's work. The comforting bustle of Mrs. Garrett in the kitchen, the evening quiet as sunset painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. She began to help Mrs. Garrett with household tasks, partly out of gratitude and partly to keep her mind occupied. The older woman proved to be a wealth of information about ranching life and about Adam himself. He's a good man, Mrs. Garrett said as they kneaded bread dough together one morning. Works harder than any two men combined. Some thought he was crazy buying this place. It was little more than a tumble-down shack and overgrazed pasture then, but he had vision. He seems to have done well for himself, Olivia observed, trying to sound merely conversational. Mrs. Garrett gave her a knowing look. He has, though it's a lonely life for him, I think. Ranch keeps him too busy for socializing, and there aren't many suitable young women in these parts. She paused, flour-covered hands stilling for a moment. He's never brought anyone to stay at the house before. Not like this. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. It's not he was just being kind after what happened. Mr. O'Malley is always kind, Mrs. Garrett agreed with a small smile. But he doesn't usually go riding out at night to check the barn, nor does he normally shoot outlaws before breakfast. She resumed kneading. Just an observation, dear. Olivia didn't know how to respond to that, so she changed the subject, asking about the bread recipe instead. But the housekeeper's words stayed with her throughout the day, adding to her confusion about her growing feelings for the quiet rancher. That evening, Adam invited her to ride out with him to check on a new calf. If you're feeling up to it, he added, your arm seems to be healing well. I'd like that, Olivia said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. He saddled a gentle mare for her, and they rode out together as the late afternoon sun bathed the landscape in golden light. The land around the O'Malley Ranch was beautiful rolling hills, dotted with stands of cottonwood and pine, a clear creek cutting through valleys lush with spring grass. It's beautiful here, Olivia said, as they crested a rise overlooking a broad meadow where cattle grazed peacefully. I can see why you chose it. Adam nodded, his eyes scanning the landscape with evident pride and satisfaction. First time I saw this valley, I knew this was where I wanted to put down roots. He glanced at her. After the war, I needed space, room to breathe, found it here. Do you ever miss the East? She asked, curious about his past. A shadow crossed his face. Sometimes, had family in Boston, parents, 2 sisters, lost touch during the war, wrote a few times after, but he shrugged. We grew apart. They didn't understand why I'd want to come out here. And now this is home, he said simply. Can't imagine being anywhere else. They rode in companionable silence until they reached a small copse of trees where a cow stood protectively beside a wobble-legged calf. Adam dismounted to check on the animals, speaking softly to the mother cow as he examined her baby. Olivia watched him, struck by the gentleness in his hands and voice as he handled the animals, the same gentleness he'd shown when tending her wound. It was a stark contrast to his decisive action against Hawkins and his men, revealing layers to Adam O'Malley that intrigued her more with each passing day. Healthy little bull calf, he announced, returning to his horse. Born yesterday, I'd reckon. Mother's doing well, too." As they turned to ride back, the setting sun painted the sky in spectacular hues of orange and pink. Adam led them to a different rise, where the view of the entire valley spread out before them. "Thought you might like to see this," he said as they dismounted. "Best view on the ranch." They stood side by side, watching as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the land. In the distance, the lights of the ranch house twinkled like earthbound stars. "Adam," Olivia said softly, her eyes on the horizon, "I've been thinking about what you said about the neighboring property." He turned to look at her, his expression carefully neutral. "And? I think my father would have wanted me to try." She met his gaze. "But I'll need help. A lot of it." Something flickered in his eyes, relief. Pleasure, she couldn't be sure. "You'll have it," he promised. "From me and my men." "That's how it works out here." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, the question that had been on her mind for days finally finding voice. "You barely know me." Adam was quiet for a long moment, his eyes returning to the sunset. "When I came west, I was lost. The war had changed me. Couldn't fit back into the life I'd left behind." He paused. "An old rancher gave me work when I needed it most. Taught me everything I know about cattle. Never asked for anything in return except that someday I'd do the same for someone else who needed a chance." He looked back at her, his gaze steady and open. "Maybe that's you, Olivia Wilson." The simple honesty in his words moved her deeply. "Thank you," she whispered. As they stood there in the fading light, something shifted between them, a recognition of connection, of possibilities neither had anticipated when she'd first hidden in his barn. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. But it was a comfortable silence, filled with unspoken understandings and the promise of tomorrow. The following morning, Adam took Olivia to see the neighboring property, the Wilson place, as she was already thinking of it. It was smaller than the O'Malley Ranch, but well situated, with a sturdy if modest house, a good barn and meadows perfect for grazing. "What do you think?" Adam asked as they walked the boundaries of what could be her land. Olivia turned slowly, taking it all in. "I think it feels right," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I can see why my father dreamed of a place like this." They negotiated with the owner that very day, and within a week, Olivia Wilson became a landowner in her own right. The transaction left her with enough of her father's money to buy a small herd of cattle and essential supplies, a beginning, at least. Adam proved true to his word, lending men and expertise as Olivia settled into her new home and role as rancher. She worked alongside them, learning everything she could, ignoring blisters and aching muscles, and the occasional raised eyebrow from those who doubted a woman could manage such an undertaking. Through it all, Adam was there offering advice when asked, respecting her decisions even when he might have chosen differently, stepping back to let her find her own way while ensuring she never felt truly alone in the endeavor. As spring deepened into summer, Olivia's small ranch began to take shape. The house, once empty and echoing, became a home, filled with simple furnishings and the occasional wildflower arrangement. The cattle thrived on the rich grasslands, and even the vegetable garden behind the house yielded its first tender shoots. More surprising to Olivia was her own transformation. The grief over her father remained, a dull ache that flared sharp and painful at unexpected moments. But alongside it grew a sense of purpose and belonging she hadn't experienced before. For the first time in her adult life, she was putting down roots of her own, not simply following her father's restless wanderings. And then there was Adam. Their relationship had evolved in ways neither had anticipated. What began as neighborly assistance gradually became something more: shared meals, long conversations on her porch as twilight settled over the valley, quiet understanding that needed no words. On a warm evening in late July, Adam arrived with a basket from Mrs. Garrett and a proposal. "Thought you might like to ride up to the North Ridge," he suggested after they'd exchanged greetings. "Sun sets directly over the mountains this time of year. Quite a sight. Olivia agreed readily, and they rode out together, the air still warm but softened by a gentle breeze. The North Ridge offered a panoramic view of both their properties, now adjoining pieces of a landscape that had begun to feel like home to Olivia. Adam spread a blanket on the ground, and they shared the meal. Mrs. Garrett had packed cold chicken, fresh bread, early apples from the orchard, and a bottle of surprisingly good wine. To successful neighbors, Adam toasted, raising his tin cup. To good friends, Olivia responded, touching her cup to his. They ate as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. When Adam spoke again, his voice was thoughtful, almost hesitant. Been thinking about something, Olivia? What's that? He set down his cup, turning to face her fully. These past months, watching you build something here, I've admired your courage. Not many would take on what you have, especially alone. I haven't been alone, she reminded him softly. Not really. His eyes held hers, serious and intent. No, you haven't. And I've been thinking that maybe neither of us needs to be alone anymore. Olivia's heart began to race as she realized what he might be saying. Adam, I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures, he continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. But I know what I feel. These months with you have been the best of my life. The way I see it, we fit together, you and me, our lands, our lives. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I'm asking if you might consider joining our 2 ranches in more than just neighborly cooperation. I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife. Though she had begun to hope for such a moment, the reality of it left Olivia momentarily speechless. In Adam's face, she saw not just the strong, capable rancher who had saved her life, but a man who respected her, who saw her as an equal, who had given her space to find her own strength even as he offered his support. Adam O'Malley, she said at last, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened, I would be honored to be your wife. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a simple gold band with a single pearl set in its center. Belonged to my mother, he explained as he slipped it onto her finger. Only thing I brought west with me besides my horse and gun. Been waiting for the right woman to wear it. Olivia looked down at the ring, then back at the man who had given it to her. It's beautiful, she whispered, and perfect. As the sun sank below the horizon, Adam drew her closer, his kiss a promise of all that was to come, a shared life, a joined purpose, love built on respect and mutual understanding. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Boise, with Mrs. Garrett beaming from the front pew and Adam's ranch hands standing awkwardly in their Sunday best. The ceremony was simple, the celebration afterward lively, with dancing in the town square and enough food to feed half the county. That night, as Olivia lay in Adam's arms in what was now their bedroom in the main ranch house, she marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. From terror and loss to love and belonging, all in the span of a few short months. What are you thinking? Adam murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. That I never expected any of this, she answered honestly. When I ran into your barn that night, I was just trying to survive until morning. His arms tightened around her. And now? Olivia raised herself on one elbow to look into his face, the face that had become so dear to her. Now I'm planning for all the mornings to come, with you. The months that followed were busy ones as they combined their operations, expanding the herd and adding new pastures to accommodate the growth. They worked side by side, Adam never treating Olivia as less capable because she was a woman. Olivia bringing new ideas that sometimes challenged Adam's established ways of doing things. They disagreed at times. Of course, both were strong-willed and accustomed to making their own decisions. But they learned to talk through their differences, to find compromise, to respect each other's perspectives even when they didn't entirely agree. And at night, they found comfort and joy in each other's arms, their love deepening with each passing day. Winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in snow by mid-November. As the days grew shorter and the work less demanding, they spent evenings by the fire, making plans for the spring and sharing stories of their lives before they'd met. It was during one such evening, with wind howling outside and a pot of Mrs. Garrett's stew warming on the stove, that Olivia shared news that would change their lives once again. "Adam," she said, setting aside her mending, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked up from the ledger where he'd been calculating feed requirements for the winter. "What is it, love? I visited Dr. Matthews in town yesterday. I've been feeling a bit unwell in the mornings." She took a deep breath, a smile spreading across her face. "We're going to have a baby." In late spring. The ledger fell forgotten as Adam crossed the room in 2 strides, gathering Olivia into his arms with a whoop of joy that brought Mrs. Garrett hurrying from the kitchen. "A baby," he exclaimed, his face alight with wonder. "Are you certain?" "The doctor is," Olivia laughed, her own happiness reflected in his eyes. "Apparently, we're to become parents around May." Mrs. Garrett clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, a baby in the house. It's been too long since this place heard the patter of little feet." Adam could scarcely contain his excitement in the days that followed, alternating between fierce protectiveness of Olivia and boyish enthusiasm about their child-to-be. He insisted on having the men clear the room adjacent to their bedroom, planning to convert it into a nursery. "Plenty of time for that," Olivia reminded him. "The baby won't be here for months yet." "Want everything to be ready," Adam replied, undeterred. "Besides, keeps the men busy during the snow." The winter passed in a blur of preparations, not just for the baby, but for the ranch's continued expansion. Adam secured a contract to supply beef to the growing military presence in the territory, a development that promised financial security for their future. As spring approached and Olivia's condition became more apparent, Adam's protectiveness increased. He insisted she rest more, take on fewer physical tasks, allow others to help with the household duties she typically managed herself. "I'm pregnant, not ill," she protested one evening after he'd taken a basket of laundry from her hands and given it to one of the young ranch hands to carry. "I know," Adam said, tucking her hand into the crook of his arm as they walked back to the house. "But humor me. I can't help worrying about you both." Olivia softened at the genuine concern in his voice. "We're fine, truly. But if it makes you feel better, I'll try to be more careful." As her time drew near, Olivia found herself reflecting on the twists of fate that had brought her to this point. Had Hawkins and his men not killed her father, had she not fled with the recovered money, had she chosen any barn but Adam's to hide in her life would be unimaginably different now. "Do you believe in destiny?" she asked Adam one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her rounded belly. "Never gave it much thought before," he admitted. "Always figured a man makes his own way. But sometimes things happen that seem meant to be," she persisted. "Like us. All the circumstances that brought us together, they could so easily have gone another way." Adam was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe it's both," he said finally. "Maybe life gives us chances, and it's up to us what we do with them." His hand moved gently over the place where their child grew. "I'm just grateful you ran into my barn that night." "So am I," Olivia whispered, covering his hand with her own. Their son was born on a perfect May morning, arriving after a night of labor with Mrs. Garrett and the local midwife in attendance. Adam had paced the hallway until the first cry rang out, then burst into the room to find Olivia exhausted but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. "Come meet your son," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Adam approached almost reverently, taking in the tiny face with its shock of dark hair and perfect miniature features. "He's beautiful," he whispered, reaching out to touch one impossibly small hand. "Like his mother." They named him Thomas, after Olivia's father, a connection to the past, even as they looked toward the future. Young Thomas O'Malley thrived, growing strong on his mother's milk and the clean mountain air. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit, evident even in his earliest months as he fought to hold his head up, to reach for objects, to make his needs known. The ranch thrived as well. Under Adam and Olivia's joint management, the O'Malley spread became one of the most successful operations in the territory. They added land when they could, improved their breeding stock, diversified into horses as well as cattle. When Thomas was 2, they welcomed a daughter, Catherine, named for Adam's mother. 2 years after that came another son, James. Their family grew alongside their ranch, each child bringing new joy and new purpose to their lives. Through it all, Adam and Olivia remained partners in every sense, sharing work and decisions, supporting each other's strengths, compensating for each other's weaknesses. Their love, born in that night of danger and courage, deepened with each passing year, weathering the inevitable storms of life with the same resilience that had seen them through their first meeting. 10 years to the day after Olivia had hidden in Adam's barn, they stood together on the North Ridge, watching their children play in the meadow below. Thomas, now a sturdy 9-year-old, was showing his younger siblings how to fly the kite he'd made with his father's help. "Look at them," Olivia said, leaning against Adam's shoulder. "Sometimes I can hardly believe they're ours." Adam's arm tightened around her waist. "Best thing we ever created, those three in this." He gestured to the sprawling ranch that stretched in all directions, the land they had nurtured together. "We've been fortunate," Olivia agreed. "More than I ever dreamed possible that night I ran from Hawkins." "You know," Adam said thoughtfully, "I've never told you why I went out to the barn that night. Wasn't my usual habit to check it after dark." Olivia looked up at him, curious. "I always assumed you'd heard something." He shook his head. "Nothing like that. Just had a feeling, can't explain it better than that. Something telling me I needed to go look." His eyes, still as blue as the day they'd met, held hers. "Only time in my life I've ever felt something like that." "Divine intervention," Olivia suggested, only half joking. "Maybe," Adam replied seriously, "or maybe just the best kind of luck." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Either way, I'm grateful for it every day." Below them, Thomas had succeeded in getting the kite airborne. It soared above the meadow, red and blue against the endless Idaho sky, as the children's laughter floated up to where their parents stood. "We should join them," Olivia said, "before Catherine decides to climb that old oak again." Adam laughed. "She's your daughter through and through, fearless to a fault." They made their way down the slope hand in hand, as they had countless times before. As they reached the meadow, Thomas ran to meet them, his face flushed with excitement. "Pa, Ma, did you see how high it went?" "We saw," Adam assured him, ruffling the boy's dark hair. "Fine job with that kite." Catherine and James clamored for their attention too, each with stories to tell and discoveries to share. Olivia listened to them all, her heart full to bursting with love for these children and the man who had helped her create them. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Adam and Olivia sat on the porch of their home, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The ranch was quiet around them, settled into the peaceful rhythms of night. "Happy anniversary," Adam said softly, reaching for her hand. 10 years since you burst into my life and turned it upside down." Olivia smiled at the memory. "Not quite the traditional anniversary celebration, marking the day we met rather than our wedding." "Nothing about us has ever been entirely traditional," he pointed out, returning her smile. "Why start now?" She leaned her head against his shoulder, content beyond words. "I wouldn't change a thing, not one moment of these 10 years. Nor would I," Adam agreed, "though I could have done without Hawkins trying to kill us both." Olivia laughed softly. "Well, perhaps that part, but the rest." She sighed happily. "The rest has been better than any dream I could have had." Adam turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. In the lamplight spilling from the window, his face was as dear and familiar to her as her own, every line and angle beloved. "I made you a promise the night we met," he said. "To keep you safe. I've tried my best to keep that promise every day since." "You have," Olivia assured him, "but you've given me so much more than safety, Adam. You've given me a home, a family, a purpose." She reached up to touch his face. "You've given me love when I least expected to find it." His eyes darkened with emotion as he covered her hand with his own. "And you've done the same for me, made this ranch more than just land and cattle, made it a home." They sat together in comfortable silence as full darkness fell, each lost in memories of the decade they'd shared. Around them, their ranch settled for the night, a testament to what they had built together from unlikely beginnings. "What do you think the next 10 years will bring?" Olivia asked finally. Adam considered the question. "More growth for the ranch if we're fortunate." "The children growing up Thomas will be 19, ready to take on more responsibility. Catherine will be giving us gray hairs with her adventures," Olivia added with a laugh. "James will be reading every book in Idaho Territory if his current appetite for stories continues." They smiled at the thought of their children's futures unfolding. Then Adam's expression grew more serious. "Whatever comes, Olivia, we'll face it together. That's all I know for certain." She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Together, as we have been since that night in the barn." As they sat there on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the land they had nurtured, with their children sleeping safely inside, Olivia thought again of the strange twists of fate that had brought her here. From terror and loss had come love and belonging, a journey she could never have imagined as she fled through the darkness that night. Life on the frontier was never easy, she knew that better than most. There would be challenges ahead, difficulties they couldn't yet foresee. But with Adam beside her, with the strength they had found in each other, she faced the future unafraid. The night deepened around them, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Inside the house, a clock chimed 10, marking the hour and reminding them of all the precious time they had shared. "We should go in," Adam said, rising and offering Olivia his hand. "Tomorrow comes early." She took his hand and stood, but instead of moving toward the door, she drew him closer for a kiss that held all the tenderness and passion of their decade together. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what?" "For standing guard that night, for everything since." Adam smiled, the smile that still made her heart skip even after all these years. "Always will, Olivia, always will." Hand in hand, they went inside to the warmth of the home they had created together, a home built on courage, respect, and a love that had begun in the most unlikely of circumstances, but had grown into something enduring and true. And as they closed the door behind them, both knew with absolute certainty that whatever adventures tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced everything since that fateful night together.